friend, and welcome to Borgcast Original Series 3.2 with Anne-Marie and Peter.
Hello!
Also with Lila, who may make the occasional snorting noise.
Tonight we are covering Elaan of Troyius, which was, originally going to be called Helen of Troyius, which is even less subtle.
Yeah.
Story based apparently on Taming of the Shrew and Antony and Cleopatra. I mean, I've not seen either of those.
You have? You've seen Antony and Cleopatra?
Oh, that's true, yes.
With Helen Mirren's nipples.
Yeah, I did see Helen Mirren's boobies, yes. I'd forgotten about that. It was a long time ago, though, and that, literally all I remember is the boobies. But yeah, some of the fashion designs definitely take a cue from Antony and Cleopatra, don't they? Written by John Meredith Lucas, third of four. Previously wrote The Changeling, which was kind of right, and Patterns of Force, which is the odd Nazi Germany one. And directed by, John Meredith Lucas.
Oh.
Third of four. This time the previous stories were Obsession and The Ultimate Computer. He was also a producer in season 2, and he wrote the theme tune, sung the theme tune. Anyways, this is the only time in the original series that the writer and director are the same person.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Now, the women, they're supposed to be something very special. They're supposed to drive men wild.
Swine, take back your gift. Your glory. These are your wedding slippers.
Our interrogation techniques are more excruciating than you are even capable of.
And I will not be given to a green pig as a bribe to stop a war.
That's another one of your problems.
Nobody speaks to me that way.
Scotty, that bomb he planted, can you dismantle it?
Not without being blown halfway across the galaxy.
This is your last chance to surrender.
Your term.
Prepare to be boarded or destroyed.
So, the Enterprise is on a secret diplomatic mission. They're picking up Ambassador Petrie. Just made me think of Petri Dish.
Uh-huh.
Now, I know him.
You do know him. He's played by Jay Robinson, and he was in Buck Rogers, Season 1's Planet of the Amazon Women. Oh, yes. I think he may have been in charge of the auction.
Yes.
I remember rightly.
Yeah.
He's also in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. I refuse to call that Bram Stoker's Dracula because it ends.
No. Who is he in that then? The Keanu Reeves one?
He's a very small role, I think.
Okay,
yes.
fair enough.
He's in Cheers. He's Caligula in a couple of 1950s sword and sandals flicks. He is very camp.
Very.
And dressed like someone who's raided their mum's wardrobe in the 1960s to do a Trek cosplay. Oh, and he's got candy floss for hair as well.
Yeah.
And he's green, because, apparently that's the thing now, everybody's green. Yeah. It has to be said, the sort of design work is not as good in Season 3. It's a lot more kitsch camp sci-fi than the previous 2 seasons where, hey-ho.
Is this the season with the space hippies?
It is. We've got that joy to come.
Okay. So, the Troyans, or whatever we're calling them.
Yeah.
And the... Oh, what is it? The Troyans and the Elasians or something. Yeah, they're in war, and well, they're both capable of war. It's kind of like being a Cold War, and in order to stop there being an all-out war, it's a marriage of convenience where she's going to be marrying the ruler that we never meet.
No, we don't.
Apparently, the women, Elasian women, have a subtle mystical power.
Ooh.
So she appears in purple and not a lot.
Well, first of all, we see the guards beam over first.
They are, oh God, I'm going to really struggle to explain this, and I struggle to even think what to Google. I used to have a really shit blue, sort of resiny, but with holes in, colour-changing egg. And that's the same material that it looks to me like their costumes are made out of. It's a sort of plasticky resiny with holes in. Shit.
Their costumes are made out of red and orange plastic placemats.
Wow.
Yep. And the leading one is called Crichton.
Oh, spin my nipple nuts and send me to Alaska.
And then Elaan beams over wearing, well, it's purple at least.
It's purple.
What there is of it. This is France Nguyen. She's in an episode of Automan. Hey! Battle for the Planet of the Apes. She plays a character called Alma, which is amusing because that's my mum's name. And since the mid-1980s, she's been a children's counsellor. having suffered abuse herself as a child. She was born to a French mother and a Vietnamese mother.
French mother and a Vietnamese.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? How's that? That's very forward thinking for the 1960s. No, maybe one of those was a dad, I guess, but that's what my notes say, and I'm sticking to it. She played a lot of Oriental parts, basically.
Now, what I want to know is she putting on an accent?
No, that is her actual accent.
No, that's fine. If that's
part
how
French, part Vietnamese. So
if that's how, yeah, but you could be part French, part Vietnamese, living in America, always lived in America, and speak with an American accent.
No, she lived in France for a long while.
Fine, okay, that's fine.
And she's got that sort of haughty Frenchiness about her. So
yeah, fair enough. But
I think it's a strong performance.
I think she does give a strong performance. I was worried.
She's made to say some awful things.
Yeah, she's made to say some terrible things, and I was worried that the accent she was told to speak that way. But if that's her voice, that's absolutely fine.
And it's interesting because you could claim this is racism, and it's, that typical it's the woman being rude and who's in power, and you see a lot of that sort of thing with the Oriental people being the rulers and stuff, but actually all her cards are white, interestingly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of every country has a North type issue here, I think, which is interesting. But on the gender side of things, really not so good. But anyway, we'll get on to that.
There's things where there is a point because she's a spoilt brat because of her privilege.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with her being called out for her privilege.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that.
Oh, well beyond.
it crosses the line so far you can't see it anymore.
Over the line!
Anyway, so you kind of end with a shot of her camel toe, and there's your teaser.
Well, that's all you need, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And then she says, I give you permission to show us to our quarters. I'm not going to go through this whole thing beat by beat. But long story short, she behaves, at least in the beginning, like a very, very spoilt brat. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of, I can't remember, I say the character's name's based on a real person, but possibly made up just as much. Death of Stalin, the girl.
Oh, the daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also the son, as in the pair of them, Stalin's children.
Oh my gosh.
Massive over
and even more bigger.
Yeah, massive over entitlement, basically. Now you can understand that in where she is the ruler, she can behave like that and get away with it, but she has no respect for Kirk as the person in charge on the ship. None at all. And you can't just argue that that's her privilege, because it's perfectly possible to be a ruler and still respect other people. You don't have to behave that way. And Candy Floss here explains that she's going to be the wife of the ruler, she's going to be the queen. She's complaining she doesn't like her quarters, and I think this is actually quite Klingon, which then of course feeds into what happens with the Klingons a bit further down the line. She talks about not liking all these cushions, and I just thought, yeah, you're a warrior race, you are. And I think there is...
Whose quarters are they?
Uhura's.
Yeah, poor Uhura. Do they not have guest quarters? I mean, all right, this Enterprise is much smaller than the Enterprise D, but you'd expected some sort of guest quarters, wouldn't you? I mean, where did Sarek and Amanda stay? They didn't stay in another crew member's quarters, did they?
I would think that what's happened is that as bridge crew, Uhura has bigger quarters
but not as big as the guest quarters, I wouldn't have thought. But anyway,
I don't know.
We never get sort of shown a comparison type thing, but it just seems really odd.
I think this is the instant, one of the instances where I think the way she deals with it is wrong, and it's overprivileged and being rude. But I think she has a point. She is a part of a warrior race, and she doesn't want all these cushions and comfort. You think about, because we're giving it a rewatch because it's amazing, DS9 and Klingons in that, they wouldn't want cushions, would they?
Should have given her Spock's room.
Yes, she probably would have appreciated Spock's room. Mm-hmm. And this, they didn't know in advance, and that's the sort of thing...
she should still thrown his eyeshadow across the room.
Or his heart.
Yes.
So I kind of get where she's coming from in terms of not liking all the cushions and everything, because she's part of a warrior race, but she's not articulating that in the right way, because nobody's ever told her no, like Stalin's kids in Death of Stalin. So at this point, no further, but at this point, I like the way Kirk responds. I like his sarky comeback, putting her in her place, making it clear she's a spoiled brat. At this point, the first time he does it, he's making it clear, but he's not being disrespectful, and he's not being sexist, and he's not being horrible. Yeah. If only he had stayed at this level,
indeed,
it would have been absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. And after he's put her in her place, as I said, in a way that I'm fine with, you then get Spock saying that there's like a sensor ghost, and he doesn't want to speculate what it is because there's not enough data and it's Spock. But I immediately went, hang on, you mentioned the Klingons earlier, and of course they turned out to be right. And then I have this, because Quinn raised this point, it's not sexist in the costume design at all. You see her ass when she turns round, but then you've got this guy in engineering, and you can see his ass too.
Crichton?
Yes.
Crichton's ass on display. Wow.
Yeah, what? Why?
I don't know. They didn't have enough plastic mats to cover his ass properly.
Can they not? Well, I'm not being funny, but were boxers not invented yet?
Yeah, it's an interesting choice, but as you say, at least it's not all just the women that have shown off their legs here.
Well, it's more than leg. It's proper cheek. It's pinchable. Anyway, when you stop being distracted by his arse, along with the weird arse placemats, they're sort of fiddling in engineering, and she hasn't asked permission to go and see it. She's rude to Scotty and calls them minions.
Bottom.
Kirk says he's going to... Bottom indeed. Kirk says he's going to teach her to be courteous. And at this point, again, I'm thinking that he's going to do it in the same way as he did.
Yeah.
And that's not what happens. Anyway, it turns out, yes, indeed, the Sensor Ghost is a Klingon ship, the Katinga class.
D7. Yeah. No, this is definitely a D7. The
Okay.
Katinga come later.
Fair enough.
I think from the motion picture onwards.
Oh, okay. Do they look much different?
Well, there's a lot more detail on the model, certainly.
Okay.
And there's some more gribbly bits on the top, I think.
Okay, but it's still a son who's got his hat on.
Similar design. It's, you can see the...
Evolution?
That's the word I was looking for, thank you.
Okay, so it's a D7 then. Fair enough. Anyway, I still like it.
Yeah, and I mean, a proper model on the
Yeah.
original, and a slightly inferior CG version on the remastered.
Is it?
Yeah, afraid so.
Okay.
I mean, the downside with the multiple effects is it tends to do exactly the same thing, which is just fly from left to right.
Yeah.
Whereas with the
CG
CG effects, they do sort of do a bit more sort of flying around. I mean, basically you get a proper spaceship dogfight, which is excellent. But it doesn't look as good as the models do in the...
Yeah. So in other words, if it's still, the model's better. If it's moving, the
if it's
CG's
doing a bit
better.
more, something more interesting.
Fair enough. And then you discover that the Ambassador Candyfloss Hair has been stabbed. And I thought actually he was dead, but he's not.
He looked it, didn't he?
And then you find out that there's an encrypted message that Uhura's decoded, and the Federation High Commissioner is going to be attending this wedding. And then you find out that the way that the Elosian women ensnare, for want of a way of putting it, the men, is that it's a biochemical process that they cry, and if the man touches their tears, they're hooked because they cry love potion.
I mean, it feels very Roddenberry, doesn't it? Even though he's not that particularly involved anymore, but it's that sort of ickiness, isn't it? Really,
it's very much the idea, and you get it sometimes in a culture that doesn't accept homosexuality, where men who are gay but can't admit it to themselves really don't like women and can't articulate why, because they're in a very high level of denial, and it's something, for example, you find on the very, very high Anglo-Catholic end of the Church of England. And it's that sort of mentality that I can see in this writing.
Uh-huh.
Women are bewitching your friends. Women are... Because, for them, because they're gay, they don't see that there might be a natural...
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not because they're gay. Very specifically, gay and in utter denial. I must be specific about that. It is about very much being in denial.
You said there was a Cleopatra reference, didn't we? In denial?
Oh, God.
I think you're... I'm here all week. Try the veal.
Well, you won't.
No, I won't, no. The plant-based veal.
Yeah. What would it be called? Vegal?
Vegal. I don't know. Veggie veal.
So, is it Crichton who goes down to engineering?
Yes, he's the naughty one.
And so we have been told, when I say we as in we as the audience and also Starfleet, that they're not at the same level of civilization as us. Mm-hmm. So how the fuck does this guy know to open the drawer of Blinkies and do the things?
I think he's been told by the Klingons.
Okay.
Because he is, after all, he's effectively working for them, so, yeah. I think they've told him what to press.
Okay, and what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he's discovered. He attacks the person who discovers him and kills them.
Very weirdly. Kind of puts his hands either side of his face and the guy goes, oh, dies. It's like, what happened there?
I don't know.
Burst his eardrums? That's not going to kill him.
And then you end up with Kirk is trying to get into Dolman's quarters to give her her next lesson. And then the guards have say, oh, we've been told that we can't let you in, or we'll get a whipping if we let you in. So Spock just appears and phases them, which is brilliant. So then Spock says, how did you guess? Because this isn't logical. And then fucking Kirk says, Vulcan is the only planet where women are logical.
No, Kirk says.
Kirk says, yeah.
Nice. Wow.
Just because a woman doesn't agree with you, it doesn't mean she isn't logical. It doesn't mean you're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was manky, but worse is to come.
Unfortunately, yes, but you cover that.
Yes. So he goes in to see Elaan again. He forcibly disarms her and gets bitten for his trouble. Then he threatens her with a spanking.
Oh, God.
Wow. As Kirk is about to give up his dodgy teaching role, she asks him to teach her how to make people like her. Oh, dear. And she cries and he wipes the tear away. Uh-oh. They end up snogging. She wants to know more about this thing called spanking.
I like the poem. I did say, well, she's part of a warrior race.
Yeah. Kirk clearly decides on building up for a demonstration as we next see him sitting on a bed, his hair a mess. Her reports a transmission from within the Enterprise targeted at the Klingon ship. Captain calls a security alert and manages to drag himself away from Elaan, but he's walking a bit funny.
Oh, God. He really is. He's clearly got a massive stiffy.
Captain Kirk and the Boulder of Doom. Held in engineering, Crichton boasts that he's resistant to torture, so Kirk calls Spock down to do the inevitable mind meld, but at least we don't get to that, because then the Elasian commits suicide, vaporising himself. Wow. Kirk realises Crichton didn't come to engineering just to send a signal, and orders Scotty to check all systems. Elaan reckons her compatriot sold out to the Klingons because he was jealous, so he wasn't going to get to marry her. Kirk realises the seriousness of their situation and says they should try and forget what happened between them. She tries to convince him to obliterate Troyius. Spock and McCoy walk in on them snogging, and it's awkward. McCoy's like, damn it, Jim, behave yourself. McCoy figures out it's the tears, and Kirk orders him to find an antidote. Sulu, we got both Chekhov and Sulu in this, by the way, for the first time in pretty much as long as I can remember. Sulu reports the Klingons are now heading for them at warp. Kirk calls red alert, but should really hand over command to Spock as he's not himself. Just in time, Scotty has discovered Crichton's sabotage, with the engines rigged to blow if they go to warp. And there's great tense music at this point, which was newly written for this season. The D7 just flies by, though, without attacking. And Kirk realises they were just trying to get the Enterprise to engage their warp engines and blow themselves up so the Klingons wouldn't be blamed. Spock rightly suggests Elaan's presence on the bridge at such a critical time is inappropriate. And whilst Kirk initially snaps at his first officer, he manages to see sense and thank him, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, I like that.
Finally, he hands over the con to Spock, which he should have done much earlier on. Elaan pulls at Kirk's emotions as they travel to sickbay, which is another nicely acted scene by Shatner. I mean, he does a good performance in this, I'll give him that. Scotty has discovered the sabotage of the dilithium crystal, which also affects their weapons capability, which raises tensions nicely. Petrie tells Bones there's no antidote, and he tries again to get Elaan to wear her wedding tat. The Klingons hail and order them to surrender. Kirk warns them off, and we see our Klingon commander for the first time. And also, the Klingon emblem makes its debut, although it's on its side. Yes. So, it's yay, but not quite. Elaan returns to the bridge in her wedding gear, which exposes all her sides. Improbably, the D7 attacks at warp. I mean, it would just fly past the Enterprise so quick they could possibly target it, but apparently they're doing everything at warp suddenly.
But it doesn't look like it, does it?
No, it would be stupid, wouldn't it?
I think there is a battle at warp in Next Gen.
Well, there's the is it the Riker or Picard? It's the Picard maneuver, isn't it? Where you suddenly go to warp, but then drop back out again straight away, so that you jump and attack.
Yeah.
So either
but
they've invented the Picard.
Different. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, very primitive models in these days, but it just didn't seem right.
No.
Spock gets some weird readings, which Elaan's necklace is the source of. It's made of dilithium crystals, which are apparently common in the Troyius system, hence the Klingons' interest. And just as well, really, otherwise they'd be boned. Klingons attack again. Kirk stalls them, enabling the crystals to be installed. Kirk plans on engaging warp at the last minute to pivot and fire. Again, doesn't make any sense. We get some misguided close-ups of the dire CG model of the D7, which has no texture or detailing beyond a couple of lights for the engines. It takes severe damage and makes a run for it. Elaan is confused. They're not pursuing to finish their enemies off. And as she leaves, she gives Kirk her dagger, so to speak. Euphemism. McCoy has a cure for Elaan's tears, but Spock says the Enterprise is the only cure Kirk needs. Which certainly wasn't true earlier, let's face it.
No.
Should have concentrated more on your ship, dude. They agree there's no cure for the Enterprise, which, yeah, it's a nice ending for a change, actually. There's no, crap, laughy, jokey ending. Yep. It's actually quite touching in some ways. I mean, I find it mostly a good episode, but with some very grievous bits that really let it down. Shatner's actually acting quite well. It's nice to have the Klingons back, even if they're just kind of rent-a-mob this week, but the D7 is lovely to see. And, there's actual tension. All right, there's a few fashion gaffes, but it's the sexism that really, holds this below the waterline, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really bad. I would say it's maybe 1/3 of a good episode, which is the third before goes over the line.
Yeah.
Because as far as I'm concerned, once it does that...
But also, the last sort of quarter of an hour is really good as well, because there isn't any sexism there either. It's just unfortunate there's a great middle chunk, which is just... You just sit there with your jaw on the floor, don't you? It's like, how did they make this?
For me, the horrific sexism, it's just too bad for me to be able to go, oh, well, I can, overlook it, because it's not...
Yeah, I don't think you can overlook it. It's just unfortunate because the rest of the story is actually pretty good, so it ruins it completely, I think.
Yeah, so it's the plot is fine.
Yeah, plot was good.
But the writing of that plot is terrible.
Yes.
Because you could have had a similar plot. It didn't have to be some weird shit intoxicating tears.
Yeah, that...
I'm guessing in some ways this is where they took the idea from with Famke Janssen in The Egg.
The Perfect Mate, yes. This is they do it better in Next Generation. I seem to remember there was some dodginess about that story as well. It's been too long since I've seen it, but yeah.
Not as bad.
No.
Because she's still...
But it's very similar in as much as the captain ends up, bonding with this woman that's been taken for this arranged marriage. So it's it's kind of the same plot at that level.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the writers took it because they thought they could do something less heinous with it.
Possibly. Yes.
But didn't it have... Was it Dr. Hewer?
Yes, that's right. Yes, the guy who played Dr. Hewer was in it as well.
Rather than green candy floss hair.
Yes.
So
now I want to watch that story again.
But just, it's because you want to see Famke Janssen, let's be honest.
In part, I think that's true.
So do I, so fair enough. I think it shows that the basic plot here is good. The problem here is the way that it's written is shocking.
Yeah.
It's awful. I have no desire to watch this episode ever again.
I loved watching Quinn's face because they watched it with us, and their jaw was on the floor. It was like, how did they get away with this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey-hoo.
I mean, what I would say on the one hand is the spanking reference now gets interpreted differently to the way it would have at the time, because at the time it was...
Well, except when she says, tell me more about this spanking...
No, that's a bit different.
Yeah.
But when he says, I'm going to give you a spanking, we now think of that as automatically kinky. Back then, it was the norm for how you discipline a child in the US.
Mm.
Whether it was still the norm in the UK at that point, I can't say.
Yes, it was. I mean, it was kind of when I was growing up. It was just going out, basically.
Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, I think it was it had to be extreme.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I found out that my grandpa tried to spank my mum. Bearing in mind, she was born in the 50s. So my grandpa tried to spank my mum when she was about 8 or 9. And she just turned around and looked at him and went, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And so he didn't. But when my grandpa told me that, I was a similar age, and I just said the exact same thing to my mum. And she just sort of looked at me, and then she grinned. And that was it. It was fine. But yeah, so we now would interpret the spanking thing as sexist, when actually someone behaving like a spoilt child, that would have been the normal reaction, including for a young man of the same age behaving in the same way. So that whole I'm going to give you a spanking, it's horrible, don't get me wrong, but that is not specifically sexist. It is later when she says it, but...
And earlier on with the, there are only Vulcan women are logical in
that's
the whole
sexist.
unit, but that's just like...
That's horrifically sexist.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's find out what other people thought.
Yep.
Jeff has this to say. Yeah, this is a rough one. There's some really ugly sexist stuff.
Yep.
And the civilizing barbarians angle doesn't play well.
No.
I do like the conflict with the Klingon ship and the last-minute jury-rig solution, but it can't really save the episode. Also, the makeup and hair of the ambassador is fairly creative, and at least Kirk...
Creative is one word for it.
Yeah, and at least Kirk falling in love isn't his fault this time, which is true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's got that going for it. And we've heard from Boss, who writes, this was an episode of two halves. When it started, I assumed it was going to be a comedy episode with the crew being tormented by their difficult passenger. Later on, it got more serious with the Klingons turning up and the Enterprise being rigged to blow up if it went too fast. A bit like the bus in Speed. Or the milk floating Father Ted, if you prefer. I preferred the scenes with Elaan when she was being difficult, showing a hatred for soft furnishings and throwing things at people. While she wasn't a likeable character, I did feel a bit sorry for her as she was being forced into a union with a warring faction against her will. Absolutely. Yeah. Her anger and her frustration are absolutely understandable and justified. And at no point does anybody think that maybe she should have a say as to...
Yeah.
No, that just doesn't come up.
Nope.
That... And although they're saying...
there is something that comes up, but it isn't that.
No. No. Later on, when she got all soppy over Kirk, I was less engaged, and I was happy when the Klingons turned up.
Hey.
While the cat and mouse battle with the Klingons was exciting enough, I really didn't like the remastered CGI Klingon ship.
No, it's crap.
It looked like a cheap toy, and the flashing green lasers were unconvincing.
Yeah.
I found it strange that nobody recognised the dilithium crystals in the necklace, and they had to rely on Spock's mini scanning device. Surely everybody knows what they look like? The idea that Kirk was able to fight off Elaan's love potion because he loved the Enterprise more was a bit weird.
Well, so it didn't work either earlier on. If it had worked from the get-go, fine. Okay, I could have just about gone with that. And actually would have made Kirk seem like a better character. But no, he gives in for a long while.
Yeah. And he says, an okay episode, neither classic nor toss. I'm putting it firmly in the toss pile.
Yeah, it's difficult because the stuff that's good is really good and the stuff bad is really bad. So
yeah, so when things are, you've got two different categories of bad as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. You've got bad like some characters are not fully realised. You've got bad like terrible effects that take you away from, to pull you out of the episode. That sort of bad you can put aside. And you can come out with something that's overall okay. Or sometimes, if everything else is really good, you can forgive it and it still comes out as a classic episode. If bad is sexism, racism, homophobia, abuse, anything along those lines, it's irredeemable. It's tainted. You cannot, it's just not, you can't just go, oh, there's some good bits. No, it's got those unforgivable, horrible things in. It is bad, and the only way to redeem it is a remake that takes those bits out and still keeps the good bits.
Okay, well, let's find out what Sampo and Yona made of this.
Oh God!
Yes, quite.
Hello. So we just watched Elaan of Troyius.
More likely 50 Shades of what the fuck.
Exactly. Let me show you an ancient Earth custom called spanking. Silence woman, slap.
Yes.
Well, to be fair, she was pretty annoying.
What?
Rude then.
She had all the reason to be rude and annoying, and she was taken from her home planet and given to some hostile man stupidness. And you are saying that she is annoying.
Well, she was. Well, she had a reason to be annoying, maybe, but...
I don't think that she was annoying. She just tried to protect herself against the men. They came to claim that she should have been happy with the trinkets they gave her. And
so it was a bit like Game of Thrones then. Political intrigue, but better.
I have never heard you say that any woman in Game of Thrones is annoying or so.
Well,
fucking hell.
Well, no woman in Game of Thrones had Power Rangers as bodyguards. Okay. So.
Stupid. I have nothing to say.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I do. I'm. All I want to do is read a poem from Maya Angelou, and this is how it goes. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with a certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Now you may speak.
There were Klingons and space battle.
Continue.
Enterprise was broken, and the solution was to jam some rocks into the warp core, and that seemed to fix it.
Yeah, because men are good like that.
Yeah. The Klingons weren't good. They had like 10 minutes time to shoot at the defenseless Enterprise, and they shot back once, and then they won. But yay men.
Exactly. Yay men. Hey, does Uhura really have a same level room that Mr. Kirk?
To be fair, I guess they just have the one set. They just added some pillows there, and that's Uhura's room.
Yeah, but I was just thinking if he was lying or not.
Good point. I actually don't know. I mean, I don't know what they did to Pike's quarters. I guess they just split it up into 3 parts and got rid of the fireplace.
I guess.
They really snubbed her big sacrifice. At the beginning of the episode, she was like, but I gave up my quarters, and Kirk was, yes, whatever. But
I felt sorry for Uhura.
Well, if we try to be serious for a moment, I mean, idea that tears are some sort of love potion, silly. I'll roll with it.
And women's tears.
Well, naturally. I mean, the women and their feminine ways.
I am suffering.
Okay. But my point was, initially, I think I liked the way that it wasn't just on and off. It just caused very strong emotions in Kirk, but he was still able to see reason, although a bit slower. But I think the ending that actually the reason was that he was more in love with the ship was a bit stupid, to be frank. But yeah. I see you're in no mood to discuss this further, so let's just end it there.
I missed a new track, I guess.
Well, that took 2 episodes. You never know how good you have it until you lose it. Well, let's see what fun we get next week.
Maybe some Margaret Atwood stuff.
Maybe. Well, until next time, I guess I'll go and show you the ancient Earth custom of...
Don't you dare!
Okay, then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's very brave or very stupid. Yeah, poetry. We're getting all very cultured now. Wow, blimey. But 50 Shades of what the fuck.
Yeah, that's the episode title right there.
And yes, we felt sorry for her as well. That's just
yes,
mean.
It is.
I think that's her greatest sin, is trashing Uhura's room, because it's not Uhura's fault.
No. And yeah, you're right. The whole reason that she's so grumpy and put out is because she is being used as an object. So it's understandable.
I just think she's lashing out the wrong people.
She
is
is.
the problem.
And arguably for too long, and it's just such a petulant way that speaks of privilege. But it doesn't mean she doesn't have a point, if you see what I mean. No. The idea of Kirk still being able to see reason being stupid, I don't know. I think it kind of makes sense that he's hooked in the beginning because of him, what he's like. But as time goes on, particularly if you imagine that there's more going on than we see on screen, you can imagine that either Spock or McCoy or both of them have had words, when they greet him and he's got the fuck off massive boner. And reminded him of his duty. And he has always had a very strong sense of duty. And so, and a love for the Enterprise. So it's not that he's so in love with the Enterprise he can resist the charms completely. It's just that particularly when he's not with her, he can see what really matters. To be honest, to him, he's always been that way. And so it gives him the ability to start with help, because it takes Spock's help, but with help to start to resist. But the best way for him to resist is not to be in her presence, hence Spock says, off the bridge. And also as well, where it's like, I don't need to do that, I've got the Enterprise. Also, the thing with these women, it's only known in that area. Humans have different biology. Arguably, the effect wasn't as powerful on a human anyway. But you do get people who, they do fall in love, but they do also have a very, very strong sense of duty. And ultimately, it's the sense of duty that overrides, if you see what I mean. Because let's be honest, if that wasn't the case, then any time someone who served in the military fell in love with a civilian, they would just discharge themselves, and they don't. Hence, you get, military families and people who move around different countries on different bases to be as close as they can to their loved one who serves in the forces. So I don't find it that... I would find it harder to swallow as an idea if he resisted from the get-go. I don't find it a problem that he initially can't resist, but then eventually does with help.
Right, well, next up we hear from the Llama God.
Long as log, Scotty, Fixicare, Shack, Ark. Draining Spain falls mainly on the plane. Now, I was going to start this feedback by saying something like, what's this? A sci-fi take on ancient Greek stories? This will never work. You'll end up in some sort of endless odyssey or something, but I'm not going to do that. I can't do that because this episode doesn't deserve to be dealt with in that sort of light-hearted way, because fuck me, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, bloody hell, I thought we'd already had some problematic Star Trek episodes, and I'm sure there's more to come, hooray. But yeah, this is certainly up there. I'm sure I'm not going to do it the justice that it deserves, but still, there's a couple of hugely massive problems with this episode. The first being consent. I mean, what actually is going on here? Elaan has apparently agreed to marry the leader of the Troyans, but she just doesn't want to. She doesn't seem to want to be part of this plan at all. So what is going on here? What is the situation that's actually happening here? And why is the Federation enabling it? This really feels like it's a forced marriage. And sure, it might be a great diplomatic solution to whatever it is that's going on, but why is the Federation getting involved? Why is the Federation forcing her to do something she doesn't want to? It might be the sensible, adult, calm, mature, whatever you want to say about it, thing to do from a certain coldly detached logical point of view, but she clearly is not at all into it. So what the hell are they doing forcing her to do this thing? And then there's the misogyny. Oh boy, is there the misogyny. I mean, having to spend the whole episode trying to tame her, to teach her manners, to be a proper good, well-behaved little girl. I mean, come on, fuck off. Maybe they were going for something like My Fair Lady here, where you have to teach someone to fit in with the upper classes or something, but it certainly doesn't read like that. What it reads very much as, and actually is trying to teach a strong, independently minded woman how to be a meek, submissive little thing that's more suitable for being a wife. So yeah, there is, wow, just so much to unpack there. So much that is wrong there that I don't know where to begin. It's just wrong, right? It's just wrong. Kirk's patronising attitude as he takes over the role of teacher is just horrible. It's awful. It's icky. Promising to spank her. I mean, come on. Maybe that past was banter in the 60s, but did it really? Or was it just that women didn't feel they could speak up? I mean, come on. It's horrible. And that's one of the lines in the episode. Mr. Spock, the women of your planet are logical. It's the only planet in the galaxy that can make that claim. Get to fuck with that. Yes, women are all mad and crazy and hysterical, aren't they? Whereas men are clearly the rational, logical ones. I mean, fuck off. Just take a look around you. I mean, yeah. This, I don't know what to say. This is morally reprehensible and just wrong on so many levels. I mean, we were worried about this season being cheap, looking at the production values from the previous episode, but it seemed to be morally really bankrupt as well. I mean, bloody hell. Let's hope it gets better, but I'm not holding out a lot of hope. Obviously, the makeup is also really quite questionable in this episode. I wanted to make a gag about Petri being some sort of a dish, but he's clearly not. And the Klingon makeup somehow manages to appear to be more racist than usual, so yeah, well done with that one. On the makeup front, I did forget to say last time, and it was brought up in the feedback to the previous this episode that the way that Scotty looked. All I will say is that it seems that some of the crew had quite a good summer break in between filming seasons 2 and 3, so I'm guessing that's what accounts for some things there. But yeah. And of course, this episode does also give us another opportunity to update the Kirk Snot count, which now stands at 10, which, is still quite low for the number of episodes we've actually had, given we're probably on, 40-something, close to 50 episodes, only 10, that's only, 20% of the episodes, but that's actually still a pretty high percentage. But this Snog, number 10, is actually really problematic as well, because on the one hand, there's the way that he treats her, which is so patronising, he just deserves a slap, not a kiss. But then the fact that the actual kiss is also non-consensual, given that she basically hypnotises him with her magic tears. Enough said about that, the better. It's just so icky, which basically summarises this episode completely, doesn't it? This is just really icky, really shite. What were they thinking? I mean, I guess I can see the basic seeds of the idea here, a diplomatic mission for the greater good, but people aren't really into it, but the way it's done, just get a fuck. So, yes, as ever, I'll be interested in finding out what everybody else thinks, and I guess listening to a lot of rage. I hope on the flip side, though, that everyone is able to take joy where they can from what's happened over the last week or so. And until next time, glory to you and your cast.
Thank you, sir. That pretty much sums up where I'm coming from. Morally bankrupt and really icky.
Icky. Yes. Yeah. Icky.
Yes, very much really icky.
Yeah. I mean, I can get excited about the D7 at least, but...
And even I can't.
Oh, a tragedy. D7 ruined by sexism. Aboo.
Yeah. That honestly though, that's how it feels. That the bits that are good are just tarnished.
And it's a shame because the bits that are good are really actually quite good, and yeah, it does get ruined.
Yeah.
Hey hoo.
I mean, when you say you're hoping it gets better,
dream on, my friend.
Well,
dream on.
In terms of morally, I can think of at least 2 episodes that aren't icky like this is in terms of season 3, but better in terms of...
I think this has been the most in-your-face sexism we've had in the entire run that I can remember. I mean, yet there have been issues of sexism, don't get me wrong. But...
Well, what about the horrible rape scene?
Which one are you talking about? With Kirk when he's split into two and is the evil half.
And then they sort of say that she kind of needed it anyway or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was awful.
Yeah, okay, I think that was possibly grim on this one, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, or they're on a par with each other and been in a different way. A bit like that one's got, I don't know, 10% sexism in it, for the sake of, well, probably more than that, 30% sexism in it, but at level 10. And this has got 70% sexism in it, but I don't know, maths, brain, no, too much beer.
Well, speaking of maths, shall we find out what True and Trace was?
So we just watched Elaan of Troyius.
We did.
And what do we think of that one then?
Well, it's a stone cold classic.
I knew you were going to come straight in there with the classic.
It's great. It's a great episode. What did you think of it?
I enjoyed it, actually. I tried to talk to you about 3 times in this, and you're shh, shh, like that.
It's a good episode. I like this a lot, yeah.
So let's go through some points. So it's good to see the return of Sulu.
Yes. And the classic Sulu and Chekhov on the com.
Yes, it did. Chekhov's wig tonight looked a bit bonkers.
I don't know if it's a wig now. I think it might have grown.
Is it? Well,
I'm not too sure.
All their hair's a bit funky in this season anyway. So let's talk about Elaan.
Elaan.
What
the dolman.
Fucking bitch. Dear me.
I like how, like, once again, like, it's the race of rude bastards that Starfleet have got to contend with. But for once, like, good old Captain Kirk, he just doesn't he's not like Picard and whatever, rolling over and surrendering. No. He's just like, nope, I'm not going to take this.
Yeah, I'm going to teach you some manners, bitch.
He's good. I like it that he stands up, because they never do. We always bend over backwards in the Federation. Stand up to these rude gits.
So there was that controversial slap.
Yes.
And she slapped,
she slapped him, he
slapped her back.
Women's rights equals women's lefts.
But...
No, I don't mean that at all, obviously.
No, but then we do, if you can give it out, then,
Oh, no one should be hitting anyone.
No, exactly. He shouldn't, but... Yes. That I imagine at the time that was massively controversial.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Really? In the 60s?
No.
No, I beg to differ. So, Elaan's tears.
Yes, right? Well, this is the thing, you see. First of all, Captain Kirk is standing up to her, and he's, bossing her around, and then she like tricks him. I like it, because for once a woman gets a way over Kirk, doesn't she? It's good. I think that's a good part of it.
See, there's two things that kind of bugs me about this. So Bones knows about the magical properties of her tears,
Yes.
right? And
Biochemical,
also,
but yeah.
all right, whatever. She's a funky, foxy chick, right?
Yes, she is.
The last person you want to be sending in to her quarters is Kirk, for fuck's
I know
sake.
Spock should have been in there. Really,
He should have been.
Yeah.
He would have just turned his back and not done anything.
Mm.
They should never have sent him in there. That was just a disaster waiting to happen. That one.
Yeah, definitely. Throughout the whole episode, they keep going, "Oh, Kirk's this is going on, Kirk's that's going on." I like how he's like, he's not only the captain, but he's got to be in charge, and he's got to keep like going down to engineering and sorting it out, and then the quarters ain't good. He's got to go and sort out the quarters.
Well, he's the boss, isn't he?
He is the boss. He's like the manager of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
It's good as well. Like, we've got this sub story with the Klingons. I just think a lot of this is good. You know, it's a bit naff, the story. You know, like this woman from a race has got to marry a different race for galactic peace, and she hates them and they hate her. So that's a bit naff, but they make good of it. It's good.
But
all the stuff that goes on.
But what did the Klingon storyline actually add to it? It was just a bit of.
It's just a bit of threat and danger,
yeah.
but it's good, you know. They get the necklace, and it's got the dilithium crystals, and they use it, and then they outmaneuver the Klingons. I don't know. I got a lot of time for this episode. I think it's a classic, and it's good.
I think he was, to be fair, one of the most boring Klingons I've ever seen.
Yeah, that guy.
You know,
he's a bad Klingon.
I said to you, they just don't
threat.
Yeah, there's no scariness about the Klingons in the original series at all, is there?
Well, sometimes there is, but not on that one.
No. Anyway, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good. Good. I like this a lot.
And go on, say it once again.
It's a classic.
It's a classic.
It is.
All right, shall we leave it there?
Okay.
Okay, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
No, it's not a classic.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not going to get too many people agreeing with that.
No, it's far too hideously sexist to be a classic at all.
And you're right, the Klingons are not dealt with great here. I mean, the commander doesn't even have a name.
No.
They're just baddies of the week, sadly, but yeah, it's just nice to see these heaven now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of why Kirk got sent in, it's because he's got the rank, and
Yeah.
the hope is that she'll
listen to the captain.
She'll respect his rank, and there was no expectation. Although we later find out that Spock absolutely would have been better because he's logical and would be impervious. She would never have respected somebody who wasn't the main person in command.
Well, she barely respected him at the start, so.
But she might genuinely have seen it as an insult to be not faced with the person in command. So that's why he's there. You're right, no one should be hitting anyone. It's wrong both ways. Did she trick him? I'm not.
Yeah, how much choice did she have over that? I mean,
I have, because her tears are not necessarily tears of, oh, I've behaved like a complete bitch, I'm so sorry. They could just as much be tears at her situation, but I felt that the tears themselves were genuine. So it might not necessarily be genuine that she's full of remorse.
I don't think she was planning on entrapping him with her tears.
That's not what I thought.
Although you could argue that she should have said, "No, don't touch the tears, you twit." But there you go. He wasn't in for that briefing, so.
But then I wonder whether once she started crying, did she then realise it gave her an opportunity?
I don't know.
Which is possible, but I
you don't really
felt
get that impression.
No, I mean, but I did feel the tears were genuine. But they could have been tears of frustration just as much as tears of. You know, as anything else. I don't think you can automatically assume that she was filled with remorse at the way she treated people. I think that's a step too far. But it doesn't mean the tears are fake.
Yep.
And he is a boring Klingon.
He is. Well, he doesn't even get a name, bless him.
No, and it's as Drew said, they are just introduced to give a bit of threat. That's all it is, which is fair enough.
I mean, at least it seemed even naffer if it just been a villain of the week.
That
wasn't,
at least it's a recognisable villain.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, it's not. It's not a classic. You might argue it's iconic. Which is a term you can use for an episode that's very memorable, has some key things in it, but is not good. But it's not a classic. It's too morally bankrupt to be classic.
Right. And we've heard from Purry.
Hello, Arcs. Purry here to talk about Elaan of Troyius. Now, this episode has some deep problems and problematic parts, and actually what really annoys me about it is that they hide what is, at its core, a not bad idea for an episode. And basically, it's almost like someone took a decent idea for an episode and basically ruined it. So if you take Murray Script Doctor for a minute here, and I'm going to look at this. Now, your basic story is the Enterprise has to escort someone who's going to be married off to create peace between two planets who are at the verge of they've acquired enough weapons tech that they can now properly wipe each other out. So it's imperative that they make peace. The Federation's been somewhat involved, or at least involved enough to basically give them a lift. You've got your spoiled monarch, rich person, and Kirk has to teach them how to the meaning of duty, all the while the Klingons are harassing them. And in fact, probably the bit that works is the being harassed by the Klingons and having the warp drive taken out by a guy, a bloke, one of the many people. Apparently, one of the things that was it Elias, the other planet, doesn't have is any technology for trousers, no trouser technology whatsoever. And like I say, that basic plot. If you can imagine, if you made the Dolman a young boy who was going off for, but again, he's been like a prince or something, or any other form of warrior. The problem is that they decided the Dolman had to be a sexy lady with many, many elaborate and weird costumes, and when not just that, very much coded as a, I'm not sure if it's just the makeup or if she was a person of color, but it's basically, oh, look at this savage who you now have to civilize, and indeed Kirk has to teach her the meaning of duty and behavior through some casual sexism. The I will administer a spanking. Dear gods. Oh no. And you've got some racial coding there that's iffy, and then you've got the gender politics, which are basically, she eventually is only taught the meaning of duty by apparently Kirk's penis, which, that's a thing, and Kirk then is immune to her make men fall in love with you power because he loves the Enterprise already. That's all just bullshit, basically. And that's kind of my problem, is you've got all this thing, you've got dodgy gender politics, you've got dodgy racial stuff, you've got this woman in lots of sex outfits, and I think you don't even necessarily need to gender flip the role, although it's a much more interesting story if you do. With the idea of Kirk potentially having to act as a mentor figure. And the idea that they've taken out the person who is meant to teach them. But it's, and I did quite like her sort of slightly snivelly diplomat who basically said, "No, I'm staying in sick bay for the duration, screw this." He was quite fun. And like I say, all the while having the ongoing threat of the Klingon attack and no trousers man destroying the warp drive. And it does sort of make sense for someone who's never seen a warp drive to be able to destroy it if you got instructions from the Klingons who was clearly working with. That all kind of makes sense, but like I say, you've got this sort of vaguely interesting, what could make a good story, but it's utterly ruined by this bizarre, weird, sexist and probably racist plot that just makes everything horrifically uncomfortable. It's at the end they go for like a sad ending of her, clearly obviously being besotted with Kirk, but having to go and dutifully be some sort of cowed woman. And again, you could build that if we at all at any point been made to like her, which we weren't. Again, I've still got empathy for people who don't like having to have crap jobs, but it doesn't work. Again, if it had been someone who you'd slowly come around to and seen them grow into this interesting person. Actually, an episode which does this slightly better and with a similar idea is the TNG episode The Perfect Mate, where you have the idea of a similar concept, but it's still got problems, but it's done in a slightly less iffy way. So yeah, overall not one I'd recommend. But as always, do keep up the good work. I always look forward to the podcast and I hope to feedback in the next one. But until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Yeah, some of it still definitely would have worked if the dominant had been a young boy marrying a female off-screen ruler, because some of this is supposed to be about privilege.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is just awful. And I think they're definitely... Where I do say there's racism in there is the whole table manners scene. You won't have seen this because you don't like horror films, but anyone who's seen the fantastic horror film, I think it's called His House or My House. Anyway, it's about some Sudanese, I forget whether they're from North Sudan or South Sudan, but anyway, Sudanese refugees coming over to this country. And one of the things that happens is in their culture, they eat with their hands. And then he's saying to her, no, you need to use a knife and fork, because obviously that's our culture. She says, but all I can taste is the metal. And they're used to eating with their hands because then it doesn't affect the flavour of the food. We see that as uncivilised, but there's a specific reason why they don't use metal.
But I mean, ultimately, I think he's put his finger right on it. It's a decent idea that's completely ruined, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
So it had potential, but hey.
And yes, Perfect Mate is better, but that's also still problematic in some ways as well.
I seem to remember, yes.
I seem to remember it made us feel quite icky.
Yeah, I think we might need to revisit that. But anyway.
What, to feel icky?
Possibly.
You can.
Okay.
Your
fingers have been too burned with that Voyager episode, haven't they?
Yeah, I was going to say, you want to punish yourself. You feel
well,
free.
No, I just feel like I need to revisit these things just to see if it's as bad as I remember. In the case of 2 weeks, yes, it was.
Yeah.
Anyways, next week we'll be covering Lower Decks episode 2 of season 4. I have no bones, yet I must flee. I don't think there is any bones in that episode, unfortunately, but never mind, because that would have been a nice time.
Yeah.
And 25th of July is the next original series episode. Speaking of racism, we're covering the Paradise Syndrome. Oh no, it's Native American planet. Oh no.
Ouch.
So yeah, stand by your beds for that one.
Oh dear.
Until then, take care. Cheery bye.
Bye.
The Star Trek theme was written by Alexander Courage, and here was arranged and performed by Drew Barker.
The artwork was created by Andy Palastides.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Shut it down!